and avoidance to confront what must be confronted, whether it's an interaction with someone else or that hard conversation with yourself, a personal change that must take place. Life is such a gift, it's such an opportunity. But we have to move through it with our eyes open. We have to see things that matter and gravitate towards truths that will shape us. Like Mr. B said over 20 years ago now, we can't ever fall into the mentality of holding our hands up to the sky and asking life to give us anything. We can't only point at ourselves when things go the way we want them to go. No, let's be about accountability, empowerment, understanding that if I don't like what's around me, the transformation starts now, and it starts with me. I wasn't perfect, I never will be, but I can learn, I can evolve, and most importantly, I have everything I need to make that happen. It's all awareness. I think that the victimhood idea is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and I know that may seem harsh, maybe even lacking empathy. But dropping that narrative was truly the best thing I've done in my life, and I know countless others who would say the same. You can't be both a perpetual victim and be in control. No, life is tough. It knocks us down, and at times it brings us to our knees. But this is a reminder that you cannot stay there. It's a reminder that those who contributed to the situation are now minor detail and background noise. It's a reminder that the path forward is about you. It's about you pushing all that aside and asking yourself, what's required to move in the direction that I most want to go? Because you are that powerful. You are strong enough to make that move. And there will be a point where you look around you and the circumstances have changed. The people are different. The environment is different. You're different. And you'll smile at yourself knowing it's not because of what the world provided. It's not because of what anyone gave you. It's not because of what people out there did or didn't do. No, it's because when you were at your lowest, when life was presenting curveball after curveball, when you looked around and maybe even thought to yourself, there's no way forward here, you found a way to get up and create something new. If these walls could talk, they would remind you of the things that you sometimes forget. Yeah, those elusive things you tend to walk right by. It's not that you've chosen to ignore them, it's that while people are complex, and we have a tendency to skip over some important things as we remain fixated on our problems, our perceived inadequacies, that finicky negativity bias. The one that states, if you went to a restaurant 100 times, had 99 incredible experiences, but something went wrong on the 100th, well, that restaurant would forever be known to you as the place where things go wrong. We are wired not to see the good, but to identify and avoid the bad. And if these walls could talk, they would unveil to you the brilliance that exists slightly out of frame. They would suggest you look over your shoulder and take a peek at how far you've come, because, my friend, you've come a long, long way. It's funny how slow progress moves. It's interesting how our lowest moments force us outside of ourselves. push us to step into those shoes we didn't know were sitting in the closet, unworn, waiting for the day we'd take on that new role, waiting on you to see that who you were yesterday is not correlated to who you can be today. And if these walls could talk, they'd fill you in on a very important statistic. They'd tell you that you've stood face to face with some of the biggest curveballs life can throw. You took on struggle and hardship that rocked you to your core, and as you stand here now, your success rate through all that comes in at, well, 100%. You are literally undefeated in your ability to move through adversity, and every time you did, whether you knew it or not, you walked into that closet and put on a new pair of shoes. You became something new. Sometimes progress is so slow that it feels like pain and it looks like stagnation, but it is anything but. And if these walls could talk, they would remind you of that truth. They would beg you to see what you've become, who you are. If these walls could talk, they would remind you of life's ever-changing, transformative nature. All the times they witnessed you upset about people and things coming and going, as you tried to hold on to that which perhaps no longer served, wishing you could make permanent those things that were just meant to be transitory, shooting stars across the sky of your life. But something doesn't need to be forever to be meaningful. And thank God, because nothing is forever. And as we make our way into that vast unknown, we have a choice. We can live in the shadow of a particular moment in time, or we can cherish the value that those moments offered to us. They gave you just enough to take a new step forward, and sometimes a new step in that direction that's calling you is the difference between nothing and everything. So if these walls could talk, they would tell you to keep your head up and be thankful for those shooting stars in your life, for they made you who you are. Then the path forward would be impossible without them. If these walls could talk, they would ask you about those times you came home, sat down in your room, and wondered how you could ever be enough. They'd call attention to that seemingly non-stop battle with imposter syndrome. They'd ask when you will feel like you've learned, seen, or traveled enough to gain some semblance of authority in your own life. They'd wonder when you'll give yourself permission to be that. You've come so far, endured so much. You're not the same person you were a year ago. Now, if you could just stretch a little further, if you could just extend a little higher, if you could see all the new shoes you've worn and the shooting stars you've collected along the way, you would know that you are designed to overcome. External pressures, obligations, criticism, none of it matters. This is between you and yourself, and if these walls could talk, they would ask you when you'll see what they see. The brilliance, the magnitude of your potential. When will you be you? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Remember how long you've been putting this off, how many extensions the gods gave you and you didn't use them. There is a limit to the time assigned to you, and if you don't use it to free yourself, it will be gone and never return." See, today is precious because it is the only one you get, each second unique in its own way, a measurement of opportunity represented by a single tick from the watch you're wearing. And if these walls could talk, they would tell you that they've seen people come and go, that you aren't the first and you most definitely won't be the last. And every single soul that stepped inside wished they'd found that courage a little sooner. Wish they'd looked back a little earlier. Wish they'd found the inspiration amidst the chaos and turbulence of their day-to-day lives. And if these walls could talk, they'd hope that maybe this would be it for you, the next step in your evolution. And what's most incredible is that you get there not by becoming something you've not yet become. No, in this moment, it's about noticing who you already are. Well, instead of the one mistake or reason to shrink into yourself, how about shining a light on those 99 reasons to expand? When it hurts, know that it's hurt worse and you've persevered. When you experience loss, know that it's not about what's gone, but what you now have and will keep with you forever. And most importantly, know that you can always step into a new pair of shoes. You can always reinvent, recreate. You are never defined by something that happened in the past. The weight of the boat does not drive the boat. And so with this in mind, chart your course to new horizons. Understand that the map you need has nothing to do with externalities, but rather the solutions that already exist within you. So take a second and peer back over your shoulder. Look at that you in the past standing at the bank of a river, hoping, praying for help, a lift, for some technology to get you across. Knowing as you stand here now that you have traversed oceans. Look, the context changes, and yes, it will always change, but your ability to endure, it does only one thing: it multiplies. You have everything you need because you couldn't have gotten to this point without accumulating the knowledge and expertise to take one step forward. And miracles, they are merely the culmination of those courageous steps. And yes, when we are stuck, when we're at that coastline looking out at foreign horizons, I get that the answers seem big, sometimes even bigger than we are. I get that the mind wanders right to the potential disasters, to the what ifs and the worst case. But if these walls could talk, they would let you know that you've come this far, endured and accomplished all this, not because you've leapt mountains or jumped those, but because when you were at your worst, you found it within yourself to carry on the exponential compounding of what has made you great and what will continue to make you great. Look, at these walls could talk, they'd show you how the difficulties of years past have become stepping stones. So commonplace, so easily solvable that they no longer even warrant your attention. That by moving forward, you have faced your obstacles, taken the value from them and made them obsolete. If these walls could talk, they'd remind you that you are not only ready, but made for everything that awaits. In a way, our eyes are liars. Not in what they portray, but in the implication of their portrayals. Our eyes highlight to us one thing: what surrounds us now. We receive a snapshot of the current moment. And what took me years to understand is that possibility and hope live far beyond what surrounds us right now. And it's that pursuit of possibility that saved my life, immersing myself in the unseen. perhaps we were given the now, not to subserviently accept it, but to transform it. I believe in our own way, we're all architects. Here's what I've found to be tricky, though, as I've spent time thinking about this. What I believe and I've come to recognize is that two things can be true at once. First, all we'll technically ever have is the present. As Eckhart Tolle explains, depression is essentially being lost in the past. Anxiety is being fixated on the future, and that healthy life is learning to cherish the now. But second is the power and control at being able to point the now at something far beyond what our eyes convey. It's the magic of knowing that we spend our days navigating a world of limitation and restraint. And it's not that we wake up and think, I'm gonna restrict myself today. I'm gonna not live up to my full potential. No, it's that we go on autopilot. We observe this slideshow our eyes play for us day in and day out and exist within those parameters. That seems perfectly reasonable. Our eyes show us a wall and our brain says, okay, this is where we stop. The end. And what I want to highlight is that world just beyond what our eyes show. A world that pushes things a little bit. A world in which we ask, okay, but what if I gave a little more? Or why can't I be like those people in my life I look up to? Why shouldn't I change the circumstances that weigh on my mind? Why have I accepted these things that make me unhappy day in and day out? Just because it's the image your eyes show you right now doesn't mean it's where you stop. That we have to learn to look for more. When I was pretty young, like right about the time home PCs were gaining prominence, my parents got this gateway computer that came with a Star Wars game demo. And you have this character, you wander around the spaceship, and I played it, and I played it, and I played it, and after a while, I explored all there was to explore. Right? Or so I thought. I assumed I'd maxed the thing out because it was a demo. It wasn't the full game. So my assumption was that it wouldn't let me do too much until I went out and bought the real version. Then one day my friend from up the street came over and I'm showing him the game, and somewhere he notices a little button that opens up this door, and come to find out there was actually a lot of real estate left to explore, a lot of game available. That led to a tunnel, that led somewhere else, that led somewhere else. Then sure, I felt like a clown for not realizing that I was needlessly wandering in circles, but at the same time was excited about this new world. There's something about that concept, the secret door, the bookcase that can be moved to unveil a passageway to something greater, to the value locked away and invisible to the untrained eye. One of the most important things for us to understand is how many of these doors exist in our lives. That if we choose to recognize and identify something more, something that excites us and invigorates us, we can usually draw a line to it. We can start little by little heading that way. Because within the current moment slideshow we see all around us exist the little passageways, the side streets, the tunnels connecting to something more. That of course those gates won't open up if you've not constructed a destination in your mind worth traveling to. Again, not because you're insufficient or inadequate or wrong, but because our default is to live life on demo mode. We have to manufacture more. Build up a higher platform and then climb up to it using ropes and ladders that we already walk by every day without thinking twice. Our world, our right now, is a toolbox waiting for us to construct a more meaningful, peaceful, happy tomorrow. And so again, I present the question, where are these hidden opportunities or gateways in your life? Where can you find the advantages dressed up as the mundane? Is it in a book? Is it a conversation? Is it applying to that thing you've been hesitant to pursue because you're scared of what might await? Is it understanding the power of 10 minutes a day? Then how starting small opens doors that we can't even comprehend? Is it a little boldness? Is it looking in the mirror and realizing you're still shackling yourself to who you were yesterday? Is it understanding that someone or something in your life isn't conducive to your well-being? Is it an hour in the morning to think, an hour at night to breathe? Is it changing a self-limiting relationship with time or money or resources? What walls can you knock down so that you might open up a world that's meant for you? A world that's malleable and without limitation. Your eyes, they don't tell the story of how things can be or what they mean. They show you the infinite tools at your disposal to build, to create, to design. To never accept a now that wasn't chosen with intentionality. That where there exists pain, there also exists a door to lessen and transform that pain. Your journey, it never ends where you are, it ends where you choose to stop. It ends where you plant a stake in the ground and accept the world around you. So if no one has told you recently, let me remind you how powerful you are. Let me reiterate what you are capable of. And that perhaps your reality requires of you some customization. Perhaps the courage to step outside the routine and the obligation. And as the architect you are, build something beautiful, meaningful, something incredible to stand on. So recognize the distinction between what is and what can be the second one understands that they are walking by the very solutions they need. That to remain in a state of discontent is simply an indifference to the resources around them. Remember this. What you see, your eyes don't provide an end state, but a path to the next chapter. A chisel to little by little evolve. As someone recently reminded me, Mark Twain's quote, "Logic will get you from point A to point B, but imagination will take you everywhere." Why? Because so much exists beyond the parameters of everyday life. It's about mapping new paths with new points and new rules. Because some exist and some live. Some comply and some create. Some see what is around them. And some ask, what can I build with what is around me? So build. Towers that touch the sky, bridges that connect the earth. Build like this is a game, and the only way to lose is to stop yourself from experiencing all it has to offer. Build like there's a world far beyond your front door. Because if you do, that's exactly where you'll find yourself. Sometimes the most important things we do in our lives are the product of sheer will, of taking little nothings that surround us and making something out of them. In other words, the greatest opportunities, often the ones we need most, they simply aren't obvious. They're hidden. Hidden behind what looks like difficulty, what appears to be hopelessness. The reason I place so much value on a single step forward when we're overwhelmed or at a low point is because a single step means you're in the game. You're giving yourself a chance to find and obtain those little hidden away pieces that can't be found when we stand still and dwell on a situation. Mobility is empowerment. And when we move forward only with what we have, we're continuously reminded that what we have is enough. We have the tools, the resources, and the ability. We just have to somehow remind ourselves that with those tools, we are capable of building, of creating the incredible. So, quick story about what I believe is the best song ever written. Certainly one of them. And it's a little bit older now, but in 1998, a band called the Goo Goo Dolls released a song called Iris. And that song changed my life. It was the first album I bought. It introduced me to music. I listened to it, probably thousands of times, and even 24 years later, it gives me chills listening to it. And so I wanted to find out a little more about the song, and I came across an interview from Johnny Resnick, who is the frontman and songwriter for the band. And in this interview, the interviewer is asking Johnny about the song. Basic questions, how it came out, how he wrote it, stuff like that. And there's a few points that I think are amazing. I want to share them with you. First is the state he was in prior to writing the song. He just came out of a divorce, personal life sort of in shambles, coming off of a bad record deal where the label from his previous album had done what record labels are notorious for, and ended up keeping the vast majority of the revenue. He had writer's block, just felt down, and had left his home to stay at a hotel in Los Angeles. My bottom line is it's not a dream scenario by any stretch of the imagination. And then gets a call from his manager about potentially writing a song for the City of Angels soundtrack. And he says he went and sort of auditioned it with what he had, which was 2 lines of a song and a guitar with 2 broken strings. It was evidently good enough. He gets a nod from the label and starts writing. And the verses, according to Johnny in the interview, they align perfectly with the movie, right? It's an angel willing to give up anything, even his immortality, to be human so he could be with this girl, right? And it's this deep dive into, what it is to love someone so much you give up everything for them. And then, and this is the icing on the cake for me, that's when I realized that I wanted to write about this. The interviewer says essentially, okay, Johnny, the verses align with the movie, but the chorus, this revolutionary, big, beautiful, powerful chorus, it seems to take a left turn. Can you explain that to us? What were you thinking? And he just kind of pauses blankly for a second. And I'm thinking, no, don't you dare say what I know you're about to say. And sure enough, he does. He basically shrugs and goes, I don't know, the words just kind of worked. And, I'm paraphrasing this, a direct quote, but that's the idea. One of the deepest, most powerful, beautiful songs I've ever heard is Patchwork, right? Even the song title, he says, was named after a country singer on the cover of a magazine laying next to him, Iris. That's patchwork. It's pieces put together, right? And then as I thought about it for a minute, it's of course it is. How perfect, how absolutely perfect. The whole thing is an assembly and construction, a metaphor for the human spirit, conceived when its author was down and out, right? Taking L after L, called to present an idea, didn't have some crazy budget or equipment to pitch this song. Nope. Move forward only with what he had in the moment. And that was enough. Then this song, a beautiful depiction of The movie's theme combined with elements of real life, his personal situation, what he goes through, maybe even components that mean nothing other than an ability to encapsulate a feeling or an emotion. Words that allowed him to put a bow on all these little pieces himself and get it out the door. And millions of people listened to that song and were changed by it. Not because of what it meant to Johnny, but because it gave them a chance to take it and fit their own worlds and struggles into those same lines. It became a vehicle to inspire others to push forward, to find things in themselves they didn't know were there. This has become one of my favorite metaphors for finding the hero buried deep within yourself. Changing your life, changing your world, changing the world around you, the lives of others, can truly be, and in fact often is, the result of just moving forward with what you have. Right? Realizing that even when the mountain seems too tall to climb, there is a way. We just require that mental shift. Listen to this question, right? Because I used to ask myself all the time, is this possible? Can this be done? Well, then that becomes the question that I focused on. And everything that occurred around me became evidence that would either support or invalidate that possibility. The second I came up against an inevitable barrier, I'd think, maybe this is telling me the answer is no. Right? Life will always be evidence for or against the questions that you choose to ask, which is why it's so important that you're asking the right questions. Because the second you change that question to, look, I know this can be done, but how will I do it? You start looking at life as a puzzle that must be solved. That same obstacle that was once interpreted as a stop sign is now merely an indicator that the path exists, just perhaps somewhere else. You've extended the pursuit. You've given yourself permission to keep looking. And it's because of these self-created expeditions that we find more in ourselves. Things won't always go perfectly, but when you look at those imperfections through the right lens, you see that this isn't about you. It's about that particular door being locked. All you have to do is believe in yourself enough to move to the next one, to continue knocking until you find a door that opens, until you find that bridge to whatever comes next. And that's why I love that story about Iris, why I wanted to share it today. It was crafted during times far from ideal, with resources far from abundant, with words far from perfect or related or self-explanatory. But you end up on the other side with this masterpiece, this song that certainly changed my life and definitely impacted many others. And it's like we have to realize when we're sitting on the edge of the bed, maybe it's not divorce or writer's block, but whatever it is holding you back, that's not the end. It's your reason to keep going, to begin again. You don't have to know how things will be, but you do have to know how they won't be. They won't be like this, because you won't let them stay this way. And maybe it's not 2 written lines and a broken guitar. Maybe it's moving forward when your strength is not at a 10 out of 10. When you don't really have that spark. Or you're longing for some resources, some finances, wondering where they'll come from. But pushing forward one little step at a time until things start making sense. And maybe it's not a combining and restructuring of song lyrics, using your personal experiences to fill the gaps on the paper before you, but it's trusting that your own story will ultimately tell itself if you don't put the pen down. That the heroes will rise, the villains will fall, and the adventure will continue on. After all, that's what life is. One giant adventure, testing us, pushing us, and transforming us when we're at our lows, while reminding us during the good times Why we're lucky to have been gifted that same adversity we once looked at with contempt. Why we're lucky that when everything's made to be broken, as the lyrics suggest, we get to make something imperfectly beautiful with the pieces. Recently, I was thinking about something a friend of mine named Tom told me a few years back. He owns a company in Oklahoma City and was telling me about how someone he'd hired essentially stole from him. And the first question that came to my mind as he was telling the story was, okay, what are you going to do about it? And I asked him the question, and he was kind of quiet for a second, and then asked in his southern accent, Eddie, if a snake bites you, are you going to chase it into the woods to get your revenge? Or are you going to get the medical attention required to save yourself? Basically, you're going to focus on the past or on what to do from here forward, right? Basically, he cut ties with the person but had moved on. Was already thinking about next steps that were best for him, his family, and his business. And I can tell you, since hearing that, it's become an incredibly valuable idea in my life. Especially as you realize that there will never be a shortage of problems. You do what you can to avoid them. You try to steer clear when possible, but adversity will always be a factor. It's about knowing that and stepping into it regardless. It's something that's always intertwined in our development, and I find value in asking myself, is this action I'm about to take conducive to my growth and my happiness, or am I just chasing snakes? Does this just feel good in the short term because I'm angry or I've been wrong or something along those lines? Especially since most harm inflicted on others derive from incompetence, not malice, and I truly believe that. I think very frequently we attribute sinister motives to others when 99% of the time it's, sheer stupidity. It's imperfect humans trying to navigate an often complex world. We make mistakes. Now, I'm not suggesting you don't stand up for yourself when you've been wronged or slighted. Of course you should, but the magic is in not personalizing the situation. By possessing the emotional IQ to understand, hey look, it's not about me, but whether I can salvage this situation from here. And that depends solely on how I choose to look at it. Emerson wrote, people do not seem to realize that their opinion of the world is also a confession of their character. And what a powerful point. The flexibility and the leeway available to us when it comes to making sense of the world speaks to not how the world is, but how the onlooker thinks and interprets. Depersonalizing the situation is one of the greatest superpowers at our disposal. When you're angry and accusatory, you will, as Tom put it, end up chasing snakes. You'll end up breaking things that will need to be rebuilt, then uttering words you'll wish you'd never spoken. But the 5 seconds required to pause, to collect yourself, then realize that you're in control is everything. The ability to see the person, the situation, or the world not as an adversary stacked against you, but as an inevitable challenge that must be managed. So how will you choose to manage it? How will you choose to arrange the pieces? And by the way, I'm fully aware the constant theme for my speeches and podcasts and videos is the act of pointing not out at the world, but in at ourselves. My responsibility, my fault, my problem to deal with. I understand just how heavy that is, how hard that can be. Especially when deflecting blame often feels like it would be a tremendous weight off of our shoulders, when revenge feels like the easy, intuitive move. But again, it's short-term relief to truly grow, to find the calm and happiness and meaning we long for. It's the internal relationship with ourselves that matters most. It's the ability to say, I may not have created this, or even, I may have made the mistakes that brought this to life, but I can't fix it until I look at both the situation and my own reflection and proclaim it's mine now. Let the past be the past. Now it's me and the present, and as far as I'm concerned, the present and opportunity, they are always one in the same, so long as we choose to see it that way. It's not what you look at, it's what you see over and over and over again. Is it happening to you or for you? Is it a problem or an opportunity, a setback or a chance to reset? I want to bring to light a story, one that I've told before, but it's so perfectly representative of the conversation. Jim Rohn talking about two brothers in an abusive household, alcoholic father, terrible childhoods. They grow up and both of the sons have families of their own. One is the exact same as his father. He's abusive and he's angry. And the other one is a great father. He's kind, he's loving, he's supportive. And when asked why, the abusive brother replies, look at my childhood, right? How could you blame me for this? The other brother, when asked, responds, look at my childhood, right? How could I let myself treat my family the same way? Then in a way, one spent his life chasing snakes, bitter, resentful. The other one asked, well, that was terrible, but what can I do to right the wrong? One personalized it, the other used it as a lever or stepping stone. And this is, of course, a simplification, but I believe every struggle we face in our lives at its core contains some element of this choice. From the little things to the big things. Where do I go from here? It's mine now, and I can choose whether to make it better or worse. Chase the snake into the woods or march forward to find the value and right the ship. Remember that when it's hardest, when you least want to. Remember that the present contains every single thing you need to begin a journey to recovery, to growth, to contentment and meaning. You, on your end, though, need to be willing to slow down the moment. Need to be willing to collect yourself and give yourself permission to take that necessary and appropriate step. A life well lived is a dance between having the strength to walk away and having the courage to go all in. It's juggling the idea that absolutely nothing matters and the idea that every second is a blessing beyond which I'm capable of even explaining or articulating. Nothing matters, so live without limits or constraints, like you're on a once-in-a-lifetime journey. But everything matters, so know that every second along the way is perfect, a building block, a microcosm of the universe resting in the palm of your hand. And I think about this push-pull from time to time. I play with the idea that nothing matters when I need courage, when I need to convince myself to be a little bolder, reinforce the understanding that there is no pressure here. Life can only give what I'm willing to carve out. And as that clock ticks away in the background, what do I have to lose? As Mark Twain put it, it's the things we don't do that become to regret. And then on the other side, when I need a little discipline, I play with the idea that the little things are everything. After all, two things can be true at once, and the details matter a lot. For me, getting up 2 hours earlier does make a difference. That pushing a little harder will add up. The little things become everything. And painting that portrait that had been tucked away in my imagination, well, that's done one very real, very tangible brushstroke at a time. It's participating in that dance between nothing and everything, the real and the imaginary. But for the time being, let's leave those very important little things and focus on the divine big things. Those nothings that with some vision and concentrated effort become some things. I have a friend that says to me all the time, nothing matters. And not in a nihilistic, throw your hands up and stay inside until the end of time type way, but in a way that poses the question, why wouldn't you risk it all? Nothing matters. Why wouldn't you risk seeing how far you could push, how long you could run, how much you could become? Because maybe, just maybe, this whole thing isn't as serious as we'd like to think it is. And instead of feeling confined and scared, what if you felt alive, blessed to even be here? And I think realizing that we build these imaginary boxes around ourselves and live within them is a huge step. That awareness that we spend so much time reaching out for things that will save us, when in reality we simply need to set ourselves free. We need to open the gates, build bridges to the infinite opportunity that surrounds us. When I think about this, a feeling that still comes to mind, feeling I had after 2K tests in college. Those of you that have been on the rowing machines, I'm sure you get it. But if not, picture a feeling similar to an all-out sprint for roughly 6 or 7 minutes, depending on when you cross the line. And when it was over, after I'd finished picking myself up, I would just sit in the hallway, cherish the feeling of being done. After pushing my body to its maximum, I'd appreciate the nothingness, the same nothingness that I'd never pay attention to at all otherwise. But in that moment, it was everything. What a gift. As you regain your composure, as your heart rate comes back down to earth, to just be still. I still love that feeling after physical exertion, the reminder to just be thankful for a moment of serenity, a reminder that life can and will inflict upon us these periods of absolute chaos, of turbulence. And often they're very necessary. They harden us, they shape us, but they also remind us to appreciate their absence. Well, same thing goes, and a lot of you, I'm sure, will be able to relate to this for something like a headache or a migraine. When they come and go in my life, it's like the second a brutal headache dissipates, that nothingness is the greatest gift I could ever imagine. The absence of pain, infinitely more valuable than any tangible acquisition. And I think in those moments, we get a glimpse of the world in its purest, simplest form, where all the nuance and detail we worry about doesn't matter much. Because look at what we have. Look how much surrounds us when we position ourselves to notice, when we simply pay attention. Tolstoy said, "If then I were asked for the most important advice I could give, that which I consider to be the most useful to the men of our century, I should simply say, in the name of God, stop a moment. cease your work, look around you. An incredible reminder to never forget where we are or what we were given. To remember that by breathing in the air around us, we have in a sense already won. And I love this because for a brief moment in time, it swings that pendulum to the nothing matters side of life. When you're living a miracle, why sweat the small stuff? And I can ask myself, why do I get so worked up? It's no big deal. Why not take the risk? What's the worst case? That I fail and have to backtrack as a now more informed and knowledgeable person. Why not stand in the face of my fears? The upside is consistently enticing. It consistently rewards. Look around and see what life has provided. How dare we waste it? And with that said, I'd also be remiss not to include this little caveat. I'm careful with the words nothing matters. Because even though in the context I've been using it for years, it's a positive, empowering thing. It's my reminder to push boundaries. So I can also see how it begs the question, well, if nothing matters, why should I care? And so let's reframe. Because it's not that nothing matters, it's that nothing outside the scope of your worldview matters. It's the acquisition of freedom, addition, by this attraction of all those externalities we let hold us back. Because you know as well as I do, it's not really the externalities that shackle you. It's your thoughts about them. So open the gate to your mind, let the detrimental out, and keep the necessary and the ideal in. Nothing matters if it doesn't align with your values and your destination. I know I say in every video, speech, podcast episode that we are the authors of our own stories. And it's because we craft our nothings and our everythings. It's because your universe, the one behind your eyes, it needs a maker every morning. And if you allow it, each sunrise can be your genesis, your own beautiful creation story. You have your hand on the dial. And so, amidst this world of infinite beauty and opportunity, look around you, soak it all in, ask yourself, what does freedom look like, feel like? Because you were put here to pursue that. And outside of those parameters, I believe that nothing matters. So why not live like it? Dream like it. Use the little thing in front of you to build the big things that have not yet arrived. Walk away when it's misaligned and go all in when you know in your soul it's right. There is everything to gain and nothing to lose. I woke up, put my coffee on the desk, opened my laptop, stared at a blank screen, and a little button popped up in the top right corner. Check for updates. Nope. Ask me again later. Why? Why not now? I don't know. I don't necessarily care about the improvements. I guess it's just inconvenient. It can wait. And that's kind of it. Let's face it, the laptop doesn't matter. The update in this scenario is not important. But bear with me, because I think what it stands for, when you apply it to the big picture, does matter. Our proclivity to take less because less is convenient. our predisposition to sell ourselves short because it's safer to leave so much of ourselves on the shelf. Because while things don't break when they're on the shelf, but you can't be both flawless and live your life. Because life comes with wear and tear. The value is the experience. And a flawless existence is void of experience, of stories, of adventure. There's a little parable about two seeds being planted. And one of them just wants to grow, wants to feel what the sun is like, wants to see how high she can get, experience the breeze, the cool air. And so she grew. And sure, she dealt with hard days. She had her difficult times, but ultimately grew to live her best life. The other seed worried about leaving her home, the world that was the ground around her, worried about damaging her roots, worried about what could be waiting for her in the dark, about the sun being too hot and the breeze too strong, and ultimately stayed right where she was, playing it safe until one morning a chicken came wandering by and ate the seed off the ground. And see, this spells out a few things. One, we can at any moment decide to step into that next level, evolve into that next chapter. But also, not doing so comes with a cost. Sometimes a hidden cost. There's a tendency to think that preserving the status quo because it's safe is valuable. But understand something, you are not a collector's item. You weren't made for preservation, you were made for growth. To expand. To reach out towards the heavens and feel that sun, that breeze. Then sure, upgrading means vulnerability. It means accepting that the unknown is bigger than you, but also contains within it everything you need. Whether it was people, things, money, resources, I used to think like that seed. Right? How can I hold on to what I have? Contain, play small. I can't lose this. I've come too far. I've worked too hard. What if everything goes wrong? I can't upgrade now. Maybe later. Maybe someday when the time is right. When it won't hurt or require that I step outside of this little world I've created. But guess what? Growth always asks of us that we leave the comfort of now. It always offers us the world in exchange for the courage to see the unseen and trust ourselves to bring it to life. And when I realized this, I saw how the act of trying to perpetually maintain the status quo is debilitating. It's looking at life through a lens of scarcity. It's only when you start to grasp how abundant life is that you realize by simply stepping into that person you are destined to be, you'll attract what matters. Some things will go, and you'll leave them behind. But those things no longer serve you. They played their part, they added their value, and are now merely stepping stones as you move to something greater, and that's just it. Sometimes living means wishing you did things differently, looking back and acknowledging that you need to be better. Sometimes living means losing the wrong people in your life to make space for the right ones. Sometimes it means spending days months, even years wandering down the wrong path so that you can get a glimpse, so that you can realize what the right path looks like. Sometimes it means no reward, no validation until that compounding finally takes place. Finally, you see just how powerful those small steps were and will always be. It means seeing yourself as the person you know you can be. Maybe not necessarily the one you are today, but betting on yourself when no one else would. There's an idea that people are neither good nor evil, but they have both within them. They choose through their day-to-day action how they'll live, who they'll be, and sure, this is a tad oversimplified, but I think the duality is useful, right? Because in a different context, for everything that occurs in your life, you can find a reason to celebrate or a reason to grieve, a reason to grow or a reason to hide. It all comes down to what one chooses to see, how they choose to look at the world. I'll never forget when Peterson talked about curtains, right, with tears or holes in them, same world on the other side, but the opening that you choose to look through paints an entirely different picture, right, contributes to an entirely different understanding. And look, I'm a pragmatist, I just am. I've never asked people to close their eyes and pretend everything's perfect, to wander down the path before you expecting everything to be easy. No, but what I am saying is that the path before you is where you'll uncover the meaning in life, and meaning requires that we are from time to time uncomfortable. To go where we most want to go, we must leave something behind, and the reality is that while it's scary, while it can be alarming and even painful, it is always worth it. That what's on the other side is what makes life worth living. I want you to know that you don't need to be walking into the same rooms, talking to the same people, doing the same things. No, not if you've outgrown that reality. Not if you're ready for the next chapter. So let's make a pact to view life not as an obligation, but as an opportunity. Something challenging but beautiful, mysterious but plentiful. Let's view the challenges along the way not as something going wrong or some kind of alarm, but rather an indication that you are doing something right, that you're stepping into the controlled chaos of your day-to-day, finding the courage to meet new people, try new things, take risks, evolve. This is what life is about. And if you can find it within yourself to see it that way, to be grateful for the discomfort that makes its way in and out of our lives, you'll know that you are evolving, reaching towards that sky. Because the danger, as far as I'm concerned, is never what happens along the way. It's what doesn't happen, because we never let ourselves accept what the world had to offer. And so on that note, I think today is the perfect day to upgrade.